subject. Maria Eagle.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And I want to begin by congratulating the Honourable Lady, the Member for North Devon, in bringing forward this legislation, and also actually in coming up in the ballot, because it's not easy to come up in the private members' bill ballot. It's only happened to me once in 26 years. So she's done well to come up in the ballot, and she's picked an issue that's very important across the House to many members. And I can say for sure, over the years that I've been a member in this House, and as I say, it's now 26 years, the postbag that I've had over that time, whether it be by letter or more recently by email and text and social media, is overwhelmingly dominated by those constituents who write to me about the issues of animal welfare and wanting to improve animal welfare. And I suspect that my experience in respect of that is not dissimilar to that of many other members of this House, that we do get a big postbag full of animal welfare issues that are raised with us by our constituents, and we are indeed, I think, in this nation, a nation of animal lovers. And so I think that the Honourable Lady has done well to select this issue. I'm not being unpleasant to her if I say that she seems to have had some help with the drafting, which, given the complications of this issue, is probably a good thing. And I'm sure that the government have improved on the drafting in the previous animal welfare legislation that they withdrew, that was more comprehensive, but that included some issues in respect of this. And I could compliment the Honourable Lady on one other thing before I move on to the substance of the bill, and that is the fact that she is implementing a manifesto commitment of her party, which is more than they've managed to do from the government front bench so far. So she should be congratulated for that as well, because it's not a usual or an easy thing to do. The only issue is whether or not this Parliament lasts long enough for her to get this legislation all the way onto the statute book. Obviously, it has to go through the other place, and it has to get through its remaining stages here. And I think there's a bit of a queue in committee, if it gets through today, Mr Deputy Speaker, a few bills ahead of it. So my advice to her, as somebody who has managed to sort of get a private member's bill onto the statute book by forcing the government to do it later, my advice to her would be, don't stop fussing behind the scenes, don't stop pressing and pushing them to make sure that the bill, if it does succeed today at its second reading, it looks very much to me like it will, Mr Deputy. Of course I will.
I thank the Right Honourable Lady for her kind words, but she clearly doesn't know me very well. I never stop pushing.
I'm very glad to hear that, because it certainly gives her a better chance of making sure that the government doesn't go soft or doesn't slack when it comes to doing all the necessary things to make sure this bill does end up on the statute book. And I think she'd be congratulated by many across the House if she does manage to do it, because obviously there's the legislation, there are consultations, the regulations have to be written, the regulations have to be consulted on, and obviously the bill has to get through committee, it has to get through report back in this House, and we do have a concertina effect on when private members' bill Fridays are coming up, Mr Deputy Speaker, so she's going to have to get that bill through committee fast. Yep. Would be my other little bit of advice, and there's a queue ahead of her of other bills that have got through their second reading, so she does need to keep pushing in the right directions in respect of that. Now, the bill does take up some of the provisions that were in the more comprehensive piece of legislation that the government withdrew in 2023, as I recall. But they've been trying to do this since 2019, since the election in 2019, when it was in their manifesto. So I do think it's a good thing that she's bringing forward these provisions. And as my honourable friend, the member for Ealing, said, there is a little extra detail, I think, in this bill than was apparent in the original legislation, and that I think is also a good thing, because I think it's not a correct modern fashion in legislative drafting to leave everything to the regulations. Sometimes it's a good idea to have the provisions actually in the primary legislation. in my view, Mr. Deputy Speaker, might make me a bit old-fashioned, but I do think there's something to be said for it. And so I congratulate the Honourable Lady on getting a few more details on precisely what's going to be done into the primary legislation. That holds the feet of whatever government is then trying to implement the legislation to the fire, and there's something to be said for that. I think that the change in the law that she's seeking to make, and it's been mentioned by a number of honourable members in their contributions to the debate today, is good in respect of dogs and cats, because currently the lower age limit to import a dog or cat is 15 weeks. Pregnant dogs and cats may be imported, as the Honourable Gentleman for Penrith and the Border, with his extra knowledge of these things, mentioned, until the last 10% of their pregnancy, and up to 5 cats or dogs or cats per person imported, and the owner can authorise somebody else to travel. I think it's entirely good, the changes that we've discussed today, being made to those limits. I think that can only be good for reasons that I won't repeat, that have been raised by other members during the course of the debate. Now, ferrets are included in the short title of the bill, and the Honourable Lady was kind enough to respond to me when I intervened on her that the reason that ferrets are included is because they can get rabies, and so there's something desirable to be said about controlling imports of ferrets. And that to me is a good enough reason to include them in the short title of the bill. But I have noticed that we don't seem to have had a lot of representations about ferrets. We don't seem to have had examples given to us about abuse of ferrets in the way in which we have seen examples in respect of dogs and cats. So I was wondering if the Minister, when he comes to reply, can just let us know whether or not ferrets are there purely as a rabies control measure, or is there evidence that there is abuse of ferrets, in importing of ferrets? Because it's not something, I must say, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that I have a wide range of knowledge on, and so I'd be interested to know if there are similar issues as those that have been raised about dogs and cats when it comes to ferrets, or is the reason that they're in the short title of the bill simply the disease control, which to my mind is a good enough reason. But I wonder if there ought to be further provisions in respect of safety of ferrets that are not set out in the regulations so far that have been said. So I'd be interested to hear what the Minister might have to say about that.
Will my honourable friend give way?
I will give way, of course.
I am very interested about my honourable friend's, keen mention of ferrets at every opportunity during this debate. And just to put on record, my brother had a ferret called Oscar.
Well, she has that now on the record. I don't really know what else to say about that, except I'm sure that Oscar brought her brother
great joy.
Great joy, and that's what pets do, and I'm sure there are many other ferret owners who might attest to the same thing. My interest in ferrets is purely because they're in the short title of the bill, yet there don't seem to be any provisions in respect of or evidence that there's abuse. And so that's why I keep raising the issue of ferrets. But and I'm sure the Minister will be able to enlighten us when he comes to reply. The other issue that I particularly wanted to raise in the debate, and I've raised it a number of times on interventions, but I know that this legislation has taken a part of the old comprehensive legislation, and it doesn't deal with penalties. And there are no provisions in the bill about penalties. It's all very well as all objecting to the cruel and appalling way in which animals have been abused and treated in great numbers by those seeking to make profit out of their misery. But the only way in which we can make sure that that ceases is by having good, effective enforcement, and making sure that those who do seek to profit in this way are made an example of through the courts. Now, I know that the Animal Welfare Sentencing Act of 2021 did increase sentencing for animal cruelty from a maximum of what was 6 months to 5 years. It's not totally apparent to me, and perhaps again the Minister can enlighten us when he replies, if he's listening. He might be able to enlighten us about whether or not the Animal Welfare Sentencing Act 2021 does in fact provide the enforcement and penalty regime for this legislation. Is that the way in which breaches of this legislation will be punished through the provisions of the Animal Welfare Sentencing Act 2021, or is there some other regime of punishment and penalty that is somewhere else? Now, obviously, in a comprehensive bill, the penalties would probably be there with all the provisions. But given that the government, with the help of the Honourable Lady for North Devon, have chosen to slice and dice their approach to animal welfare legislation and bring forward separate bills, I do hope that the Minister will be able to explain, when he comes to reply to the debate, quite where the penalties are written, what they will be, and are they being increased? Can they be increased by regulation? And what he might expect those who fall foul of this new improved legislation, what penalties and punishments they might expect to meet if they continue in their nefarious activities. And that brings me to the other point that I wanted to raise, and that is the issue of enforcement. Now, I know that I've raised it on interventions on a number of occasions during the course of the debate, and the Honourable Gentleman, the member for Penrith and the Borders, did have something to say about it too. But having the law on the statute book is good. It's a good first step. It doesn't stop abuse of the law. It's enforcement that stops abuse of the law. So I wonder if the Honourable Lady, when she replies to the debate, but perhaps the Minister in his reply, might say something about enforcement. Since the Animal Welfare Sentencing Act 2021 increased the maximum penalties for animal abuse, have there been increased prosecutions? Have people gone to jail? And have they gone to jail for more than 6 months, which was the previous maximum term? And can we expect those who smuggle puppies and who do so because it's a lucrative trade, they can make hundreds of thousands of pounds doing this? Therefore, the enforcement and punishment regime needs to match the scale of that potential profit that they can make. Otherwise, the law will sit there and it will not work in the way in which those of us in this House who support it from across the chamber wish it to work. So I welcome this bill very much. I congratulate the Honourable Lady from North Devon on choosing it when she fortuitously came up in the ballot in the way in which she did. And I hope that the Minister will be able to reassure those of us who support this bill around the chamber, and there have been very, very many of us speaking today. I hope he'll be able to reassure us about precisely what is going to happen on enforcement and what the penalty and punishment regime is. Because it's all very well getting the law right if we don't then enforce it, catch the perpetrators and pursue them through the law to the maximum available opportunity, then these lucrative trades will continue and we will still have problems with animal welfare in this country. That having been said, I'd like to finish by congratulating the Honourable Lady for North Devon on bringing forward this piece of legislation. I hear what she says when she says she's tenacious she'll have to be to get all this done before the Prime Minister calls a general election, but I know she will stick at it. Hopefully then we can get this bill onto the statute book and doing some of the good which it purports to want to do. But that will only work if the government can reassure us that they're going to get on with the regulations and get this working as soon as possible, because they've spent the whole of this Parliament saying they're going to do this and not managed to do it yet. So at the end of this Parliament, perhaps the Minister can stand up and say that he actually managed to do this and got it right to where it needs to be, and perhaps he can reassure us about enforcement and about punishment. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Flick Drummond.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker.